What is up, my Nimians, and welcome back to Nim TV. I am your host, Nim, and let's have a little bit of a talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, this isn't going to be a normal movie review. I mean, it kind of will be. I will be giving my thoughts on the movie because I didn't actually review it when I first saw it. And the main reason I didn't is because I didn't know what to say about it. Because the movie's kind of meh. Like, I like it, it's got it's fun moments and stuff, but at the same time, it's kind of bland and forgettable. Like, up to this point, I already forgot a lot about what was in it. And so I thought I'd have a little bit of a discussion of how this movie had some missed potential. And also sort of compare it to the recent MCU movies that have been really good recently. It's interesting to look back at, Marvel and see, phase 1, you have a few good movies, a few not so good movies. Phase 2, you have a few good movies, a few not so good movies. Then you come to phase 3, where basically every movie is a complete hit. And you get to the point where we're at now, which has been, like, every movie for the past few years in the MCU has been completely, like, really good. And then you suddenly get to Ant-Man and the Wasp, and you're left wondering what happened. This movie, again, like I said, it's not bad, not good, just kind of bland, and it's actually more of an Iron Man 2 or a Thor 2 kind of movie, where it's way too similar to the first one, where it's sort of, doesn't have enough of its own unique voice, where it just doesn't stand out at all. So let's get a little bit into this and have a little bit of a discussion on how this movie did play out and how it could have played out. So the basic plot of this movie is they are trying to bring back Janet from the quantum realm, and that's basically the plot. First off, it's not really much of a superhero movie if you really think about it, because there's not really any heroics. They're just trying to bring one person back from somewhere they've been lost for 30 years, so it's whatever. But anyways, there's sort of this moral dilemma set up between her, Janet, them saving her, and saving another character who's sort of a villain character known as Ghost, who's also dying, whose literally only motivation is that she's trying to save her life, which would end up causing Janet to not be able to come back. We're not going to get into the details of how that works. You'd have to watch the movie to actually understand how all that goes down. But an interesting thing I noticed is that could be an interesting moral dilemma, right? You have one life for another. Whose life is more important, right? Is it the character who has a personal connection to our main characters, or the character that we just introduced? Now, obviously, as the viewer, we might be thinking, oh, the character who has a personal connection to the main characters. But at the same time, you're kind of thinking, well, why is that person's life more important than the other? So you have an interesting moral dilemma set up that could really take this movie somewhere and make it something more than just a kind of fun superhero movie. And they don't really go anywhere with it. That's sort of my issue. And like when they set this up, I was really interested. I was really intrigued into where they were going with it, and then they just kind of continued to play it as just your typical boring Marvel movie, and that's where I kind of lost my interest, especially when it got closer to the end and the whole moral dilemma is just sort of taken out with some of the worst Deus Ex Machina I've ever seen. And yeah, there's a lot of other missed opportunities this movie has as well. For instance, they don't really play with the sort of, superpower of being able to turn small and everything. They don't really add much more to it than what we've already seen in, like, the first Ant-Man movie. I mean, they have a lot of fun with it too, but they don't really add much more dimension to it. And also the villain character's superpower is, like, she can phase through things and stuff. They don't really do a lot with that. It's like these movies, they typically, when somebody has a superpower, they do their best to sort of play around with that superpower in very fun and creative ways. This one, they add a new superpower that hasn't been used in other movies yet up to this point, and they kind of just don't do much with it, and it's just kind of there. And there's a lot more interesting things you could do with the character of Ghost as well. You know, for instance, you know, Ghost is constantly in pain, slowly dying, right? But we don't really feel the pain or anything like that. You just kind of are like, oh yeah, she's constantly in pain. It would have been more interesting if you could maybe parts of her were slowly fading away or something like that. I don't know. There's just a lot more interesting things you could do with this movie. But the way it is, they kind of just take the idea and do it in the most basic, generic way they could. They didn't really add much creativity to the movie, and that's my overall problem with it. Because again, like I said, the past 6-7 MCU movies, each one took an idea and ran with it and sort of really infused it with some sort of interesting creativity that made it unique and something special. And they've been really good at doing that recently, and it's kind of frustrating to see that sort of streak of good, really creative stories just kind of stop with Ant-Man and the Wasp. I don't know. We'll see where things go in the future. Again, I don't think it's horrible. Would I recommend going to see it? Like, if you're a fan of the MCU and you want to see all the MCU movies, I mean, you've already seen it anyways, so no point in recommending it for people like that. But as an average moviegoer who's kind of interested in seeing it, I don't know, like, it's really difficult to decide whether it's worth seeing or not for people. But anyways, I wasn't going to review this initially because I was just, you know, at the time when I watched it, I didn't have a lot of time to record a video, and then I just kind of got bored of it. But then I started to really think about it and really think about what it sort of means for the MCU, where it's at as a whole. And it got me thinking, you know what, why don't I make a quick video just giving my own little discussion to add to that topic. And anyways, that's really all I have to say about it. Add to the discussion in the comments if you want. It's an interesting discussion to be had. And yeah, let me know what you think of the video and everything like that. So, thank you so much for watching. Goodbye. I spoil loyal fans, I foil your plans and leave fluids leaking like oil pans. My coiled hands around this microphone are lethal. One thought in my cerebral is deeper than a jeep full of people. MCs are feeble, I came to cause some pandemonium. Battle a band of phony MCs, a stand-alone one. Imitator, intimidator, stimulator, simulator of data, eliminator. There's never been a greater. Since a barrier